Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and this week we are going to start putting the gearbox into the Alfarrari. Alright guys, welcome back to Home Built, and those watching last week will have seen that I was buttoning up a bunch of the bits and pieces on the engine bay, gradually putting everything together. If you missed it, I'll put a link up above so you can catch up, and please, if you're not subscribed, subscribe, tick the bell and all that sort of stuff. It does help the channel out. So last week, I got a couple of comments about the electrical connection touching the engine. That's coming in and out a bunch of times. I'm actually will definitely hold that away. Don't be too concerned about that. I've still got other things to go in underneath it, so that is not an issue. Everything else is sort of mounted up underneath the car, so I'm pretty happy with that. So moving forward, I want to start building the center console and sort of getting the spatial setup inside with the seats and everything else, and to do that I need a gearbox in the car, so I have the gear stick coming through and I can just put everything into space where it needs to go. So I think first things first, let's drag out the gearbox and see what we need to do to get that ready to chuck in the car. All right, now let's talk about the gearbox I'm using in the Alfarraris. Now, some of you might not have been around watching when I originally got this gearbox and explained all the reasons why I chose it and why it's the perfect gearbox for this job. But I'm sure there'll be lots of questions as always, so let me cover them now. This gearbox is from a Subaru BRZ. It's a 6-speed manual Ison gearbox. It's the same one used in a heap of different cars with just slightly different configurations. Some of the main reasons why I picked this gearbox is because it's relatively small. I have a tiny tunnel to work with, and even as it is, I've had to enlarge the tunnel to fit this in, and that's made my seats super small. There's no way I could fit a T56 or some sort of big chunky gearbox in this car. It just would not work. Power-wise, lots of people are always like, that gearbox is not going to handle it. Subaru BRZs that run turbos and are doing a similar power to what the Ferrari engine makes, which the Ferrari engine standard is a 400 horsepower engine, 300 kilowatt engine. Cars that are making that type of power do potentially start breaking the gearbox, but a lot of those are turbo cars which are making a lot of lower end torque. The Ferrari engine does not make a lot of torque. It is not a torquey engine. It's actually a very high revving engine that makes relatively low torque. It just makes power up nice and high. It revs to 8,700 RPM. So I think this should be good, and if it does break, the gearbox are relatively cheap, they're relatively available, and there are gear sets that I can put in them to strengthen up the weak sort of third gear and things like that. So we will see how it goes. Another big reason why I picked this gearbox is because the starter motor mounts on the gearbox side, which is what it needs to do for the Ferrari, because there is no provision for it to mount on the engine side like a lot of cars have. All right, and some of you may not have seen when I built this, but basically what I've done here is I've taken the standard BRZ gear stick mount, which used to sit back, right back far behind the gearbox in the BRZ, and I sort of cut it up and flipped it around so that it would sit forward and I could put the gear stick where it needs to be in the Alfa. And that's what I've done here. Using the same linkage, I've just flipped it over the other way. Yes, it gets gears the right way around. It doesn't flip it upside down or anything like that. So now I've got this all bolted on and mounted in the way it's going to be. Selecting all the gears it needs to select. 6 and reverse. We're now going to get the car out and put it up on the hoist, and let's see if we can get this thing mounted into the car for good. right, so clutch is installed. The back is a bit scratched up from when I had it sitting around, but this is a brand new high performance clutch for the BRZ gearbox. So one of the big things that I made sure I did with this whole car is that the only sort of Ferrari stuff is the engine itself. The flywheel is modified BRZ. The clutch is just a standard off the shelf. Well, this is an aftermarket one, but you can just use Subaru parts. So trying to keep the future maintenance costs under control. So that is all good. So I think now we can actually start looking at bolting up the gearbox itself. All right, it's a tight fit and the gearbox is now in and it's bolted up from the bottom. So now we need to go up the top and do the top bolts and look at starter motors and things like that. All right, so those of you who've followed the build know that I actually have a window in the tunnel inside the car because there is no way to get access from underneath, and it's got this sort of panel here to cover up the area. And this is so I can do the upper bolts up and fit the starter motor. Now, this car is designed to take the standard Subaru BRZ starter motor. Now, I'm not sure if this is going to have enough guts to actually start the Ferrari engine, which is why Wasp Engineering made me up this awesome billet starter motor that bolts up to the same flange, but it's clockable and and super beefy. The only issue I have is that this starter motor is much longer than the other one and it won't fit inside my cover. So for the time being, I'm going to try the Subaru one, and if the Subaru one doesn't have enough guts, then I'm going to have to remake the cover, the tunnel cover, and fit the big, chunky, awesome Wasp Engineering one in. But if you guys need any of this stuff, you should really check them out. They do massive monster alternators like the one I've got on the car and sort of big custom starter motors. So this thing will definitely have no drama starting the Ferrari engine if it comes to that. But for the time being, let's try and fit up the rest of this stuff and see if we can button up that part of things. Well, that is the sort of thing that really, really sucks up a lot of time. So I've just spent the last hour and a half, 2 hours fitting up the top of the bell housing and basically trying to fit the clutch master cylinder. And the issue is that, like everything, I've sort of dry fit almost everything up, but not necessarily everything together. So there's just clearancing that I needed to do on my my bell housing adapter with a long aluminium die grinder bit, and just getting in there and clearancing just enough room for just the back of the master cylinder, and just, you know, different little tiny bits and pieces, and they all add up to taking a lot of time to getting it right and getting it in. But the gearbox with the clutch, the clutch master cylinder, the starter motor, they're all connected up. I still have a little bit of wiring to do, which I'll tackle at a later date. But at least that part of it is actually now on the car, where hopefully it will stay. Let's move forward. All right, well, I've gone through now. Obviously, the gearbox is in. I've put the handbrake in, and I've bolted the seats in. Now, I have chosen to keep the factory seats, unlike some other cars where I put race seats in them. There are multiple reasons why I thought I'd keep the original seats. They fit, they already bolt in. I don't have to mess around with making new rails and all that sort of stuff. They're already ready to go. And I've got limited space anyway, so it's good having seats that are supposed to be in here. And also, there's such a really cool design. The headrest on these is just so cool. Once I saw that, I thought, well, that's got to stay. And so I've already realised that there is no room down the side with this sound deadening that I've put on the modified tunnel. This is just not fitting as it sits. So you can see I just have zero room anywhere. I can't get my fingers down here. This is just solid against the tunnel. So first thing, seat out. Let's see if we can make a little bit more clearance there, because we still have carpet and center console and all that sort of stuff to fit into that place. So I'm going through now and just fitting the stuff under the dash, and like everything in this car, it's very, very tight. I did pre-fit it all, but now obviously there's sound deadening and all that sort of stuff in here. So trying to make sure I can get the heater box and then fit the air conditioning. It's all in the previous videos, but I had to separate them out for space. So now I'm trying to run the heater lines and just making up the heater hose. I've had to go dash 8 push lock, put a length of hose on there, and then slide some dash 10 over the top to adapt it, because I've got so little space to actually use sort of proper AN adapters and stuff like that. It'll just extend it out and make it too big. So I've got the space here. So it's just a matter of going through all this little stuff and making everything fit now that it's all in at the same time. You know, I pre-fit things without all the wires in there and without all the other things, and like it's tight and it's taking a lot of time, but we're getting there slowly. All right, we have the seats in, we have the heater unit, as you can see in the back there. This panel under here, that's actually the ducting for the air conditioning. So the basic setup is in there. It is very, very tight. And because I haven't actually fitted all with everything in yet, I'm just looking at it and realizing that this air conditioning unit has got 2 air conditioning lines that need to run down along the tunnel somewhere and through into the little bulkhead I've made here, along sort of over where the back seat was, and then up through into the air conditioning compressor in the back. Now, the issue is there is no room here at all to fit aircon lines. Like it is super tight everywhere, and there's no space. And looking at the driver's seat, no room to tuck it around down the driver's side, and even down this external side of the seat, there is no space. As this car was originally designed to be a left-hand drive car, there is so much more room on the passenger side. And we have a ton of room in here with the passenger seat, between the passenger seat and the sill, and it's and also with where the door trim goes. There is a heap of space on this side, but it's really tight in the center. So what I am thinking is I'm going to have to move the seat over this way, and then I'll actually have room to build a bit more of a center console and have space for the air conditioning lines and just the bits and pieces I need to fit there to make the car do what we need to do. All right, so we have the front 2 brackets for the front seats ready to go to move the seat over 40 mil. And now I've got to make a couple of brackets to move the rear over another 40 mil as well. And then we can mount it to the seat and we'll weld it on while it's mounted to the seat. So let's do that. All right, so I just spent a bunch of time then building up some nice, big, heavy, chunky seat brackets. They're much heavier duty than the original ones, which is good, because obviously you want some safety. And I've welded in some captive nuts into them. And the plan now is to just paint some weld-suit primer on the back, clean up inside the floor where I'm going to weld them up, and then I'll bolt these to the seat and tack them in while they're attached to the seat so that I make sure they're in the exact right spot. So let's do that. All right, so now you can see after a lot of work, I have all of my new seat mounts and they're over from where they were. So I've got 40 mil extra on this side. So let's bolt the seat in and see what it looks like. And now the seat is in. We have plenty of space on this side, still more actually than the driver's side. And in the tunnel, there is a bunch of room. Now in the tunnel, I can now, yeah, there's plenty of space, so I'll be able to run my air conditioning lines all the way down and fit it in. The driver's side is super tight, and it always was on the right-hand drive cars. That's just how it is, but at least we've got some space. All right, well, that was a lot of work getting the gearbox in, putting a bunch of the interior back in again, but at least now I can sit in the car and make broom broom noises. It's getting ever closer every week, which I'm very happy about. I can actually change gears too, which is great. So that is all the time we have this week though. So I think that means it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys, the Ferrari 333 SP is a prototype sports car that was introduced in 1993 and quickly became a force to be reckoned with. The car was designed to compete in the IMSA GT Championship and other endurance racing events. The 333 SP was powered by a 4-litre V12 that produced around 650 horsepower. The engine was mated to a 6-speed sequential gearbox which allowed for lightning fast gear changes. In addition, the car featured a carbon fibre monocoque, which made it super light and agile. Dallara actually worked closely with Ferrari on this project, providing the suspension, the gearbox, the aero development and construction. The chassis and the tub, they were developed in-house by Ferrari. The 333 SP was incredibly successful on the racing circuit, winning the IMSA GT Championship in 94 and 95. It also won the 24 Hours of Daytona in 98 and the 12 Hours of Sebring in 95, 96 and 98. The car's success was of course in part due to its powerful engine, which allowed the car to reach speeds of up to 220 miles an hour on the straights. One of the most notable features of the 333 SP was its distinctive style. It featured a sleek aerodynamic body with a prominent front splitter and a large rear wing. Despite its success on the racing circuit, the 333 SP was only produced in limited numbers. Ferrari built just 40 examples of the car between 93 and 97, making it one of the most sought after Ferraris in the world.
All right, well, we're getting there. I've got at least the seats in now, and I can start working that centre console, and just struggling fitting all these bits in together is quite a challenge, but it is going together. It's tight under there, and I've still got wiring to do, and there's more plumbing, and like, yeah, it's getting there.
Yeah. It's all part of the fun, right?
But there's a seat in it now, and I can make broom broom noises.
Any women watching, and I know there might be maybe one, maybe it's Jeff's mum, I think, that's it,
Yeah.
but you understand where need to be say more. Anyway, like and subscribe, let Jeff know what your thoughts are. Patreon if you want to follow a day early with no ads, help Jeff out on his quests.
Crazy adventures.
Take care everybody, and we'll see you soon.
See you next time. See ya.
Bye. Providing the gearbox, suspension, aero construction and construction. Dallara actually worked closely with Ferrari on this project, providing the suspension, gearbox development.
No.
Ferrari on this project, providing the gearbox, the suspension,
Aero development and construction.
and construction. The 24 Hours of Daytona in 98 and the 12 Hours Sebring in 94, 95 and 98. No. Distinctive styling of its front splitter and its large rear backside. Rear wing. Aerodynamic body which featured a front split and a
Splitter.